Welcome to Elder Speak 2021. We want to welcome you, our virtual audience, from our neighborhood, across the country, and even across the world, to this beautiful theater, the Snowy Owl Theater on the campus of Icicle Creek Center for the Arts, nestled in the mountains in Leavenworth, Washington. Elder Speak is an umbrella program of the Ripple Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to depth work and transformational experiences. Our program is entirely funded through generous donations from people like you. If you would like to donate, please go to theripplefoundation.org and click on the donate button. All donations that are received during this live stream will go directly to Elder Speak programming. We'd like to thank Rebecca Riker of the Icicle Creek Center for the Arts for the generous donation of the use of this theater. And to our technical wizard, Eric Frank, and his trusty helper, Craig Root. Also to Morgan Fraser, a longtime Ripple Foundation supporter, who will be fielding the questions that you ask in the chat. We would also like to thank our other sponsors, Cashmere Valley Bank, Dan's Food Market, Eagle Creek Winery, Wenatchee Valley Technical Center, and Roots. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. I'm Deb, and I'd like to speak a little bit to the journey that Elder Speak is. Elder Speak is a hero's journey. A hero is someone who goes on an adventure, is victorious in a decisive crisis, and comes home changed or transformed. These elders have done just that. They have gone on a year-long journey through their memories, their life experiences, their personal reflections and family histories. They share these with one another deeply. It's not an easy journey. To find wisdom, claim it as our own, and share it. That is challenging. At the beginning of the year, each elder said, "What wisdom? I don't have any wisdom." Now they come before you, the hero, changed in the way of the humble traveler, carrying wisdom that they know in their bones and are willing to share with humility. Their journey has required courage, vulnerability, and perseverance, but it has also brought friendship, laughter, peace, and self-acceptance.
Thank you, Deb. My name is Theresa, and I'm introducing the student film. But first, a little backstory. Throughout the year, we have been meeting on Zoom or in person, outdoors, but mostly on Zoom at the beginning of the year when it was so cold. And that's fine, meeting on Zoom like that and getting to know one another and hearing each other's life story, but we needed a little bit more. So Rufus Woods came and introduced to them an interview process by someone outside of their group. He interviewed each of the elders in March, and he wrote an article for each elder, which you can find in the Wenatchee World April edition. Then we were able to meet with the students of the Wenatchee Valley Tech Media Center. Restrictions were limited. Restrictions were lifted. Usually they meet in November and December with the students, but this year we didn't meet until April. And by that time they had interviewed with Rufus, but now they got to interview with students. And what happened is that the elders got to drop all barriers and really deepen into their wisdom by sharing and mentoring with the students. It was a beautiful process, and the students responded by, one wanted to interview his grandmother and great-grandmother. Another just couldn't stop asking questions, even after the camera was turned off. They finished the film, and this is what we're going to be watching now. Thank you.
I did a restaurant with a girlfriend, and I decided that we were working in Leavenworth at the Edelweiss at that time. That was years ago when Leavenworth just first changed over. And we decided, hey, both our bosses drove gold Cadillacs. We thought, there's something wrong with this picture. So she was a great pie maker, great gal. And I pretty much was a people person. And we started a restaurant. Both my boys cooked. My daughter waited tables. A lot of relatives worked for me. A lot of her daughters worked for us. We had quite a time. That restaurant has been very successful. It's a Big Y Cafe. And I'm still really proud of that today. I worked with a lot of young people. I trained a lot of kids how to work and how to be successful. And I have a lot of them that come back to me. I mean, I'm like mom to a lot of kids in the Upper Valley. I spent a lot of time with them because I worked right alongside them. When you've had all you can take of something, I mean, it has to take a lot for you to give up. A lot. But when you give up, you have to have some place to go. I went to the Lord. He helped me through this. I wouldn't have had the strength to do all that I did had I not had a relationship with God. If you didn't have a good heart, and you weren't around very long, because I didn't want to waste my time and everyone else's time on someone that didn't have heart, that didn't care, that didn't want to care. And I fought for some to make them care, but I wasn't wonderful with everybody. I mean, I chewed some serious butt many times. But then I always came back for them. I mean, they knew I cared about them. If I didn't care about them, I wouldn't have bothered trying to teach them. I didn't just try to teach kids how to work. I wanted them to be a better person, to be proud of themselves. Most teenagers, I think, have a hard time. I think you struggle in your teen years with your self-worth, with who you are, who you're going to be, what you want. But if you just sit down and think about it, really think about it. I look at all these kids today and drugs and all the things that are going on that just makes their lives so miserable. I've learned that more people are interested in more what I have to say than I ever thought they would be. I never thought anyone would ever be that interested in what I had to say. But all of a sudden, it seems like you want to know what I think. Now, I think that's just marvelous. Lots of times I think it came through prayer. I think you have to believe in something. And believing in yourself is probably the most important thing that you'll ever do for yourself. But I always just figure, if you want to do something, there's a way. If you work hard, I mean, not everything's possible, but I think most things, if people give their heart to it and work for it, can be successful in any job that they decide to do.
So if you said to me, how did I plan all this? I haven't a clue. I think, took the opportunities when they came. And I think that's really, in many ways, the secret. I wouldn't say I'm the brightest guy in the park by any stretch of the imagination. I think the one thing I did too is I wanted to do something. I saw the opportunities and I took them. And give me not the man who can do the surgery or the operation, but rather the man who knows when to operate. That's just huge, huge. And maybe it's difficult, as I said, from a lay perspective, but, when do you operate? What's the time? And also learn that you don't rush your patients, you rush between your patients. So time, and some patients demand more time than others, etc. But I think that for me, it was a critical thing. So listening is a huge part, I think. You've got to be prepared to never give the impression that you're rushing. And it pays off in terms of just spending time, etc., and going over the cases and make sure they've got everything answered. I didn't know any of my grandparents, I should say my grandfathers. The situation in Ireland at that time was people were inclined to get married later. So in fact, they didn't have families until later. And that was probably largely economics, I'd say. But if there's one regret that I have is stories that I've heard later on. God, I wish I'd heard that, or I didn't hear it at all, etc. And Theresa said at one of your meetings recently, one of the younger men basically said, God, this is a great idea. I got to go back and talk to my grandparents and grandfather. I would say that is a very rich thing to do because it's lost in a decade. It's lost in a generation. Well, for me, I was out this morning. You walk up that valley at the moment, but the flowers, well, you know the way they are. It's a spiritual experience. The birds are singing out there, and it really doesn't matter how the stock market is doing or what decision. Realizing what we're all going to be 6 foot under, so enjoy this while you can. At least this is where it's at. It really doesn't matter how much you accumulate in this life. It's really how I'm enjoying it at the moment, and it's there on your doorstep. It really is. When I think about the United States, I think about the real treasures of the United States are the parks and the forests. They really are, the parks and the forests, and they must never. We must always keep it controlled. And I think that's the beauty about here, is the Land Trust have done a great job here. I think in terms of preserving a lot of the good stuff for people around. But my brother told a story about him one time, because I think the important thing about teaching is nurturing. And it's to recognize the talents of the skills of those kids coming up. In fact, this is what the old GP to me said. He said, the most important thing about leadership is recognize the skills and the talents of the younger generation coming up behind you and nurture those. And that is so true. It really is. But I don't want to sound big-headed, because I've been here. If there's anything that I can be helpful in terms of it, I'm more than happy. But you are it now. You're the new generation. I'm going to be dependent on you guys from here on in. Because let's put it this way, my success has been built on the shoulders of those, both patients and people who've gone before me. It sounds a cliche, and but it's true.
And as life went on, things changed. There were more. In fact, I was worried because of my mom and dad, because they were the ones that said you need to marry a Catholic, and I was the first one that didn't. And but they didn't. But they didn't. They just felt, that everything will be okay. It just, as long as you go to church, I think was their main thing. And so that worked out. Mm-hmm. Honest, always very, he taught me really some things that being about faith being faithful. I don't know. There was just something about it that he was just a good person. And I think he's there, close to it. If it's not. But anyway, it was just a good relationship. I miss him. Yeah. And there's no other guy for me. So that's why I just, my friends and family, Jan, how come you're not looking for, that's okay. Fred was enough. He was my, yeah. So he made my life good. He did. I thank him. I go see him every once in a while out in the cemetery. I had more empathy for kids that had issues, just because he also had a temper, my brother, that had the seizures. And he, if he got upset and he could be almost violent. And so that's why we always were worried. But at school, there were times when I just knew that and it was mostly boys. There was one girl, but this one boy, he had potential. I knew he'd be okay someday. He was just going through something and he did not have a real good life at home. Mm-hmm. We had one boy that was kind of alone a lot, and one of the students took him in under their wing, and I'll never forget that. That was a lesson to me, in that he had compassion for this boy that was sitting by himself and would go sit with him because nobody else would. And this one boy, the reason I paid for his fee, his parents did not have the money. So I paid his fee because he needed his diploma to get into the military. He was leaving in June, and it was like soon. I mean, after school was out, the end of June, I think it was. And I said, I will pay it. And he says, I'll pay you back. And no, I says, you just pay it forward someday. When you can help somebody else, you do that. I really enjoyed the kids that I got to know. Yeah. And so I learned a lot being a secretary at school because of that, different kid. And I think you have to take your time, though. You have to use your time to help them because they're the ones that are needing that help.
I was born here in Wenatchee in the old St. Anthony's Hospital on February 1st, 1931, a little over 90 years ago. So it's been a while. In 1931, when they drove from Ephrata in a rental car to Wenatchee, my family lived in Ephrata. They were just building Rock Island Dam, the first dam on the Columbia River, which I think is interesting because all of the dams on the Columbia River have been built in my lifetime. When I was in junior high school, one of my school teachers, Mrs. Matthews, was taking a health class, and I'm sure everyone's taking a health class. And she told me that she thought I would really make a good doctor. And right then I decided that's what I wanted to do. To me, surgery was a craft. You started as an apprentice, you're a low man on the totem pole. You're in these operations, you're holding a retractor for 3 hours or 4, whatever it takes, and watching. And then pretty soon you're doing, the most basic stuff. And then you just advance, and finally you're a journeyman, and then you're out on your own. And it's a constant learning experience because of the technology, the materials that you're using totally changes. I mean, surgery just in my era, I did not get into the non-invasive stuff because I was just too far along, and we had young people coming in that were being trained in it, and we wanted them to get the experience. They didn't need to share it with me. Same company every summer for all those years. And so I knew a lot of those, I'm driving a cement truck and a gravel truck and that kind of thing. It started as a laborer, and it was a thrill to have them come to me as a patient. I love seeing those guys. It was just, they were so, those are the people that mentor you. I think we stratify ourselves, and that's not good. That's too bad. My best, in my group of people that I ski with and everything, there were a couple of doctors, but nobody else, they're doing something else. I had no desire to only be with the people I worked with or whatever. It didn't make any difference. Part of that maybe is growing up in a small town, working on construction, working in construction. Those are great people, They didn't go to college, but it didn't make any difference to me. They're just great people, and they can teach you a lot. Probably taught me more than anybody else on how to be a doctor, how to relate to people, how to be a hands-on person, how to be compassionate. I'm sure I learned more from them and, the downtown businessmen that let me pull the elevator up and down, or, learn how to change a tire, go hang out around the service station, learn how to change oil, all that kind of stuff. I've had several relationships, with people who have done great things for me, and have told me that's how you pay it back. You pay back. How can I ever compensate you? How can I ever thank you enough for what you've done for me? You don't have to. You do the same. You pass this down the road. So they wanted me to be able to be a mentor. You're not even aware, I think, what they're doing until much later, and you realize how they directed or changed how you compute mentally, those kind of things, how you interact with people. You watch how they interact with people. And, I've been with people that just treat people like dirt. And it wasn't money. That's the other thing that's so important. It's not the amount of money you have that bring happiness to you. Yes, it's nice to have enough money to buy your kites and a new board once in a while and a new pair of skis, but that's not where happiness is.
We hope you enjoyed our film. Next, we are going to be inviting the elders up onto the stage. And while we're doing that, we have a short slideshow with some photos and some wisdoms, just to give you a little feel of what we've been doing during the year. So enjoy the slideshow.
So their first elder interview will be with Francis Collins. Francis Collins was born in Ireland, the youngest of 4 boys. He was raised in a military camp that was actually, the camp was actually built during the Crimean War, so it had a lot of history. And he remembers his childhood there very fondly. The other thing that's really important to Francis in his life was his high school years in the Dominican high school. Francis thought he wanted to be an oceanographer and ended up being a dentist. But ever the learner, he also became a medical doctor and a surgeon. Francis eventually came to the United States to practice in Texas, and his wife, Gabby, liked it in the United States so well that they decided to live here, and he eventually got a job at Harborview in Seattle, worked there for about 10 years, and then came to Wenatchee, which has been his home all this time. It's been a long journey, and throughout the year of looking at his life journey, Francis always came back to how important kindness and respect has been to him. His wisdom statement is, kindness and respect bring happiness and peace. So, Francis, I love the image that you shared of your mother cleaning graffiti off your neighbor's house across the street. In Ireland, that was a thing, I think. You also talked about how your father and mother showed respect and kindness and acceptance of others. Please share with our audience the experiences you've had that taught you kindness and respect and how that became important to you and how that relates to our community today.
Yeah, well, I think I have been very fortunate in the sense that I have had a very happy childhood. I think the example given to me, number one, by my parents, and then my brothers, 3 brothers, who are all deceased right now, and my aunts, uncles, etc., was just phenomenal, actually. And it gave me a very high standard, I think, in relationship to that. The personal examples I mentioned about my mother, in fact, this obnoxious graffiti was put on the pavement or walk-in of the neighbors, etc. And she, without any encouragement, was seen on her knees washing this graffiti off at 5 o'clock in the morning so that the people would not be offended. But I think the other example I got was my niece, who in fact was, actually there are 2 aspects to this. When my brother got married, he married a gal from Ceylon who was of a different religion, Parsi, and in fact a different race, essentially. She was what we use the term colored lady, basically. So you can imagine her coming back to an Irish area where it's usually only white people and essentially Christian. And she certainly was an image to behold, as we would say. But they accepted her without any hesitation, etc., encouraged my brother, the Father Seamus. And subsequently, they had a child, Roisin, who relates the story about playing in Ireland with the neighbours' kids, etc. And she comes in crying to my mother. She'd just been called the N-word, nigger, as they would say. And she relates even to this day how my mother just took her in her arms and consoled her. You know, it's kind of interesting, the impression that left on that child, and for us to see that gave me a great start in life in terms of, you know, kindness, etc. My father, the same, the old soldier. Never ask a man his religion or his color when you're in the same foxhole as him, because he has your back. So these examples of kindness were very, very obvious to me, true, and it gave me a great, I think, lessons in tolerations and acceptance of others.
Francis, how does that relate to our community today?
Well, I think the one thing I have mentioned very seriously is listening to people. I think that's a critical issue. And, you know, I am concerned when I look at some of the talk shows that people are not treated with the respect that they should be. In other words, they're interrupted when they're asked a question, etc. And I look back to some of the Tim Russert, who used to run the program of Meet the Press, a total gentleman, never interrupted, would give an individual, to put it mildly, sufficient rope to hang themselves, so to speak, but it was always a total gentleman. He also was a reviewer of scholarly works, but it was always so nice to see him interview people with an enthusiasm. He'd read their stuff beforehand. And, you know, he was my icon or model as how to behave. And I wish so many of our TV interviewers would take a lesson out from his book. So I think listening is such a critical part of how one treats people. And that's something that shouldn't be forgotten.
I know that you listen to your patients. Did your patients listen to you?
Well, I think the important thing about your patients, number one, is you spent time with them and that you treated them with respect regardless of their physical, their religion, their race, etc., and that you were able to convey to them that they were on your side. You broke the ice then when you did that. And I found somebody who might be angry, I was very easily able to reverse the situation once they realized that you're on their side. But that's critical, I think, in terms of getting that message across.
How do you get that message across?
Time and respect. Even though you may not like what they're saying, basically, you have to listen to them and try to see their point of view. I'm not sure that I would have that great success with the public health issues we're having currently at the moment with all the diverse opinions, but nonetheless, I think a patient must realize that you're treating them with respect.
How does that carry out in real life, though? Let's say it's not a patient, it's your friend, and your friend disagrees with you.
A great question. I have learned over the years. My brother was a great confidant, in fact, 4 years older than me. And I would ask him for his opinion. And I didn't like what he was saying. And I would interrupt him. And he'd look at me very patiently and say, "Are you looking for my opinion or are you telling me my opinion?" So I've learned over the years that, in fact, it's fine in a discussion, an argument, don't try to win the argument. Again, listen. By all means, give your opinion. But if you realize that it's falling on deaf ears, as an old prof of mine used to say, Dr. Worth, man or woman convinced against his will, never in his lifetime will. So there is a point where you may be wasting your sweetness on the desert air, in which case you kind of retreat, but never allow yourself to get angry.
Those are great. Thank you so much, Francis. I can't believe that 10 minutes is up. That was fast.
God have so much.
Helen, you are next.
Oh, boy.
Oh, boy.
Lucky me.
Helen Rayfield, your journey began in Ohio, where you were born, but raised in Tennessee for just a short while. You moved to Leavenworth as a child, and you've lived and raised a family, worked here in Leavenworth all these years. You've contributed so much to the community, and the biggest one, I think, is the one you talked about on the film, the Big Why. Because there you created a refuge for people, for orchardists to come each morning, for families to have meals. And you also created a refuge in a way for teenagers to learn to work and be mentored by you. One thing that struck me that you shared was that this Elder Speak group may know more about you than many of the people who've known you their whole lives, because you've been so forthcoming. And that is the thing about you that I really admire, is your honesty and your forthrightness. Your wisdom statement is, in life, always treat others as you would like to be treated. Then you will have happiness and peace in your life and in the hereafter. And then you add, God bless. So this reminds me of the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I'm curious, how do people do that? How do people treat other people as they want to be treated? What stories do you have and experiences?
Many.
Can you share with the audience?
I think that would probably be appropriate. I never ever hesitated to say what I thought. Lots of times I wasn't right, but many times I was right because some paid attention to me, and a lot of kids, I think that I helped a lot of kids through their teenage years by teaching them how to work and the respect for others, and for others to respect them. Anybody that works in the public learns very fast that they are really pleasant, good people to wait on, and then there's the people that are very demanding, and usually those people are not very happy people. You learn a lot about people just by their demeanor, by the way they treat others. I enjoyed a lot, and as my kids would say, Mom, you always loved to boss everybody around. Well, I was pretty good at it, so I did what I did best. That pretty well covers my time doing business work.
You talk about treating others as you would like to be treated. Do you have some examples from your life where you asked someone specifically to treat someone well?
This happened when my young daughter, my boys both worked in the kitchen, and my daughter was waiting tables. And I've always said that treat everyone the way you expect to be treated, because that would make the world a whole lot better and a different place if people would do that. And my daughter was waiting on a family that came in regularly on Sunday for chicken and dumplings. And we were very busy. We were always busy on Sunday, lots of people after church. And Debbie came up to the counter where I was, the cash register, and she was crying. And I said, honey, what's wrong? And she said, well, Mr. So-and-so is really being rude to me, Mom. And my daughter is a smart girl. She wasn't a dummy, and she wasn't disrespectful to other people. So I knew something was up. So I asked what happened, and she told me. And so I went back and I told this party. It was a family, but it was the father that was the demanding, always demanding whenever he was in the restaurant. But this day he just pushed the button a little too far, and he had my daughter in tears, and that really upset me. So I asked him to please leave if they were not happy with what we were serving or doing at the Big Y. Well, he didn't have to leave. Yes, you do. No, he wasn't leaving. I said, oh, yes, you are. So if I have to, I'll call the cops and have them escort you out. And that made a believer out of him when a cop came in, and they left. The very next day, there was a counter at the Big Y too. I'd never seen him sit at the counter, but I came out of the kitchen and he was sitting at the counter and he asked to speak to me and I talked to him and he apologized for his behavior and I told him, you know, you have to treat my help with respect because I expect them to treat you and everyone else with respect. But if you can do that, you're more than welcome to come back. They came back and we had many happy Sundays after that. But I think that I taught him something about maybe not just younger people, but about people, people altogether. It doesn't pay to be rude, and there's no need to be nasty to anybody that's trying to serve you. So that was a good learning lesson. And my daughter grew up with that, and she is the same way now. She's a school teacher, and she has learned a lot about treating others, and she's very respectful, and I really admire my daughter for the gal that she became. But that's one of the memories that I was really concerned about after it first happened. But there's no way that people would say, boy, don't ever criticize anybody at the Big Y. If you do, Helen will throw you out. That went around the community quite a while. So.
That's wonderful, Helen. Thank you so much. Who's next?
Yes. So Jerry, you're next. Jerry Gibbons has led an interesting life. General and vascular surgeon for 49 years with the Wenatchee Valley Clinic, medical director at the clinic, and later director of the medical departments at Wenatchee, Alcoa, and the Chelan County Jail. He's been husband of Barbara, father of 3, grandfather of 11, and great-grandfather of 10. Jerry was a child of small town Ephrata, where his grandparents were homesteaders, and everyone knew the Gibbons boys. The community was strong and supportive as Jerry discovered his desire to become a doctor. Mentors were abundant in Jerry's life. Truck drivers working on the reclamation projects, the local doctor who let him observe and help, the airmen training for World War II. The list is too long to go into here, so let's just say that Jerry had many allies, many mentors in his life.
Right.
And he listened to them all. Life is a journey, and Jerry learned early on to listen and learn from those who came before. Now it's his time to share, to mentor us with the wisdom he has gained throughout his life. Jerry, your wisdom statement is, while dealing with family or a mentee, wisdom is not continually directing, protecting, or giving answers. Listen, encourage, allow dreams, and accept failures. Stress setting a goal, not a path, but do not wander aimlessly. Have confidence in yourself and persevere. Can you share with us, all of us, your thoughts on setting goals, not a path, how to be an effective mentor, and what makes a truly fulfilling life?
In 10 minutes. Let me start off by saying tonight was the first night we saw the video. We knew we'd been interviewed, and but we didn't know what clips would be used. And it just so happens in mine, we discussed, my career goal and my comments about mentors. And so I will expand on that a little bit. The goals. I think it's very important to have goals. And we kind of talk about career goals, but I think goals are essential. And what I would want to tell young people are start having goals when you're young. My mom set some goals for me. I had to learn to tap dance, took piano lessons, took clarinet lessons so I could be in the band. When I was 12 years old, my dad was active in the Scouts, and I wanted to be a Scout. So on my birthday, I passed my tenderfoot badge. But the goal for a Scout is to work your way through the ranks, with the ultimate pinnacle being an Eagle Scout. And it takes a lot of hard work and a lot of time when you're very busy, as we've talked about. But it's a worthy goal, and I was very proud when I made that goal. I see it now in my I'm blessed with, as Deb said, 10 little great-grandkids. And they're learning to read, so that's a goal for them, and you should encourage that. The Scouts were a goal. Yes, my career goal was to be a doctor. And that's where I get the pathway to the goal, start thinking about the pathway. Because that was my goal, and I was going to do it by going to the University of Washington and getting into, hopefully, the new medical school that was being developed at that time that would be active by the time I graduated from college. So that was my goal. The only other medical school in the Northwest was the University of Oregon, and it's a state school, so getting into that would be unlikely. So that was my path. But during my senior year in high school, we got a call, or my folks had maintained a friendship with a young airman who had been drafted in New York City. He was going to NYU, shipped to Ephrata, Washington, as a link trainer instructor, and he became a good friend of the family. A lot of the airmen, Ephrata was a little dinky town at that time. There were, I think, under 1,000 people. And so the airmen, before the USO was built, and would come to church and come to your homes and hang out with you and that kind of thing. And got a letter. He had just completed his first year at Allegheny College in Meadville, Pennsylvania. And he wanted to come out and work. He loved the West, wanted to come out and work that summer. And the jobs were opening up with the Columbia Basin Irrigation Project. So, it's a tough decision. I'd never hardly been out of the state of Washington. You're going to be gone a year. No way you're going to come home during vacations and things. You just couldn't afford it. It was going to be more expensive. But my folks encouraged me, and I did that. So that altered my path. But what a wonderful experience that was. But to get back on my path, I thought I'm going to come back and go to the finish at the University of Washington, go to medical school. And again, the path changed, and I ended up at the University of Rochester, which was fortunate, because I found and married a young student nurse. So goals are changing. That's a career goal. But I think life is tough. There's lots of up and down in life. Everything doesn't always work out. I think it's okay to change your goals. I've had good friends in high school. I had friends in college that wanted to be in pre-med and dropped out, took another path to a new goal, and were very successful. Go in the Peace Corps for a couple of years, go in the Army or the Navy, get the GI Bill, come back, and have very successful careers. So there's nothing wrong with changing your career. But as I said, you can't just wander aimlessly. You've got to identify yourself. Who am I? Is this what I want to be? I've got a lot of potential. Where do I want to end up? And even at 90, you've got to have goals. I mean, my gosh. All through life, we need to have dreams, set goals, dream, and strive for those things. Never have an empty bucket. Always have something on your bucket list that you want to do. Mentors, Helen gave us a great example of a mentor. My thoughts about mentors are much broader too. You think of a coach, somebody advising you, directing you. Frank and I had wonderful mentors that directed us as we're learning our trades. We're learning to be surgeons. That's very important. But the most important mentors, and I mentioned it in that video, were some of the men that I worked in the Columbia Sand and Gravel. If you drive from Ephrata to Moses Lake, you'll go by the gravel pit at Larson Air Force Base. I spent 6 summers on that gravel pit. And those guys were wonderful mentors. And I think that's how we can be mentors. You'd live a life that is a good life. And you learn that from mentoring. You learn that in the Boy Scouts. You learn the 12 Scout laws. You learn the motto, the Scout oath. You go to Sunday school and church. You learn the 12 commandments. You see people that you think, gosh, they impress me. That's what you want to be. So I think we all can be mentors, and we should be mentors. And it's kind of who walks the talk, you know? You make promises, or do you do what you say you're going to do? So I think we can each develop as a mentor just by setting an example that people want to emulate. As far as fulfillment, have I got time?
I think we're...
Are we done?
We're doing really well. If you want to do a little more, Jerry, you can.
Well, what's a fulfilling life? I think it's sharing your life, having someone to share your life with, a partner, I think is extremely, and we fortunately got married early enough and she Barbara wanted to participate in me reaching my goal, and it became our goal. And it's something you just have that relationship in your entire life. The decisions I made weren't just me making the decision. Those were decisions that we talked about and got a yellow pad and put down the pros and cons and all of that kind of thing to make those decisions. So I think a partner that you can share your life with is important. The second thing is family. I think those of us all appreciate very much our families, and I just can't say enough. That's the legacy for me, is leaving these wonderful families that are evolving, and being able to go to any one of their places and have a wonderful meal, sit at the table, a couple of dogs under the table, a little kid crawling around, the napkin bandit stealing your napkin. You know, what can be more joyous than that? The third thing is it's the happy or a successful career, or one that you enjoy. But the fourth thing for me is physical activity. I think it's so important to have physical activity in your life because that encourages good health. You know, you're lucky to live to be 90. You've got good genes. But part of it, I think, is because you've been active your entire life. That's the pandemic now for us is obesity, and you just are appalled by just this week 4 more states. Over 50% of the people in the states are obese. Childhood obesity now with COVID and making it much worse. So I think stay physically active.
Telling me I should move more.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jerry. That was wonderful.
All right. You may be the last one interviewed, Jan, but not the least. Jan Wallick was born on a farm in Nebraska in 1940. She is the second oldest of 9 children. Caring, compassion, and responsibility were learned early for Jan, with all her helping out with her younger siblings. The family moved to Washington when Jan was 15. Later, she married Fred Wallick and had a wonderful relationship with her husband and raised 2 wonderful daughters. She worked in Kashmir schools as a secretary. She had great dedication to her job, but regularly went well beyond her job description, recognizing and assisting students in need, often from her own resources. Jan's great compassion and caring was always shining through. In a large family, there are many joys and also many tragedies. Jan's embracing and acceptance of change and her innate knowing that she can do anything has led Jan to have a fulfilling life. Jan is always helping people, her community, and her church. Jan has enjoyed Elder Speak, saying that we don't usually think about what it is we know. Jan, known as the Cookie Lady, for always having treats on hand for any occasion, thrives through her volunteer work, exercising, gardening, and reading. Your wisdom statement, Jan, that things don't always go as planned and you have to accept change. I think we all have some experience with this one. When you have this shock of a change, how do you go through to acceptance? And what has helped you to embrace and accept change?
Wow. Yes, change. I started learning that when I was a teenager, when we had to move from Nebraska to Washington. And I was very, my parents, it was the summer of 1956, and I had just finished my sophomore year, and they said that we would be moving, and I, of course, thought, I'm not moving, because I'm going to lose all my friends that I know so well. And but of course I did. I went with them. All of us came and arrived in the summer of '56, and I made a pledge to myself, and that I would go back to Nebraska after I graduated when I was on my own, so that I could be with my friends. And I did that in '58, and when I got there, the friends were around in the area, but they were also all ready to be free and after graduating, and so they had other plans, and they were going here and going there. And it just hit me that, it's not like it was. I thought it was going to be. We were did all these things together, and we weren't doing that anymore. And it wasn't that we didn't talk to each other, but we did. But it just was different, and I missed my family, and so I moved back to Washington. And that change was one where I felt, the way things went, when I went there, then the friends weren't available like I thought they would be. And so I learned to accept that I just have to figure out a plan, that I had to live something on my own. It just, I don't know how to say that. But anyway, in accepting that change, then I went to work, but the one thing I did, my family guided me too. And then I had a friend that I worked for that changed my life actually completely. He was an attorney, and their family had me go to the west side of the mountains, and I was a nanny, and it really gave me the opportunity to further my education in a vocational school. And then after I was done with that in a year, I got a job in Spokane, and then went to, I got married, I should say, and then we moved to Kashmir, and I became a school secretary. And that was the rest of my life, basically, was with the kids and people of the educational field. And then I lost my husband 9 years ago, and it was very sudden. And to accept that change, it was a hard change, but my church, my family, and my friends were there for me. And I also learned that you have to just go on and just kind of get there, just keep on going and doing what you can for other people, and it all worked out.
Jan, you've had a lot of difficult times in your life, but it seems to have raised the bar on your empathy for your students. Tell us a little bit more about how you helped students and how you helped them accept what was going on in their lives.
They're the students. You could always. I always felt like I knew. I gave them like I don't know. I gave them the encouragement to go on with what, like in the office, for instance, the kids that get in trouble, then there's a reason a lot of times when they are, that's happening. And I just gave them, I guess, a shoulder to cry on, I guess. It just kind of, I knew that they were going to get through it, but yet they didn't know that. And so I just kept aware of and some of them that couldn't afford things, like for this one instance was an athlete didn't have running shoes, and another co-worker and myself went in and together and paid for shoes for him. Things like that just to help him kind of keep on wanting to be in school and be active, and because sometimes that didn't always work out, and just various things like that, and that we mentioned in the film. The boy that really made a difference in his life was the one that with the military. I had signed up to go into the military after he graduated, and he didn't have the money to pay a fee after and he wouldn't get his diploma if he didn't pay the fee. And so I told him, I says, I will pay it so we can get you your diploma so you can go into the military. And so he says, well, I'll pay you back someday. And I said, no. I says, you just pass it forward someday when you are able to help somebody else. And he said, thank you, and off he went. I do not know what happened to him, but it's just one of the stories that I felt like I made a difference for him. And there's just a number of students that I still have. We see when we see each other, we can kind of talk about some of those things again. Now, as they're adults, older adults. I'm really an older adult. So, but anyway, that's kind of where I'm at with the helping. Yeah. What was that?
We wouldn't even be here if we weren't older, because this is elder speak.
That's right.
So.
That's right. Yeah, yeah, it was. It was a good experience, that's for sure.
Well, we have time now for questions. Morgan Fraser is manning the computer to get your questions, which you can ask either through your YouTube chat, or you can text a phone number if you don't have the ability to use the chat on YouTube. The phone number is this. It is 509-433-8109. I'll say it again, and it's only for texting. 509-433-8109, or type in your question through YouTube. Morgan, do you have any questions arriving yet?
First of all, I want to say thank you so much. As you started talking, Dr. Collins, I realized you took out my wisdom teeth for me. And Helen,
I have been the most hated man in the valley.
I don't recall being especially excited to come see you, but I appreciate it now. I still have straight teeth, so thank you. And Helen, I grew up in Manson, and we would stop at the Big Y on our way to Seattle, and it was like a special place to stop and eat. And I still go there, so.
Thank you.
And the pie was always so good, so thank you. I do have a couple questions while we're waiting for some to come in. Some are mine. I'm going to start with Craig's, though. Craig wants to know, with our world changing so rapidly, how do you see yourself bringing your wisdom to this new changing world? So what do you have to offer some of us? This is for anyone. What do you have to offer some of us in way of wisdom about the way that the world is and is changing at this time?
Can anyone answer that?
Anyone.
I believe that the world has definitely changed. I think that people aren't, not everyone, there's a lot of really good people, but I think there's a lot of people that just travel in their own little narrow path, in their own way. They don't share, they don't see others. I think to really enjoy our world, you have to give of yourself to others. You have to do things that make someone else happy. I think happiness is something that we lack in so many areas, and it's so easy to make someone happy if you just step out there and do the right thing. And I think there should be more of that.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any thoughts on that?
For me, I see it's so difficult because people don't seem to be out socializing, mixing. I was thinking of that, trying to organize my thoughts about goals. And you know, for me growing up, and I think for all of us, your parents kind of pushed you out the door in the morning and said, you know, make sure you're home by the time the street lights come on. Well, you'd go home earlier because you had to eat, unless you go bum meals from a neighbor. And so we had social groups that were so important in those early years, I mean, teenage years. You know, we're in the courthouse lawn playing Steal the Flag. You know, just, I don't know, you're kids, girls and boys, you know, you're all together. We were mixing it up. The guys were together, you know, we could bird hunt in those years. It was okay to have a shotgun and go out bird hunting. There were just constant activities going on. I know COVID has been a huge dampener, and tragically so. You know, the kids that are in high school right now or in college or in their residency or whatever they're doing, it's been so altered by the COVID virus. So that is bad, but it's going to end. And I don't know how we're going to get back to that because of the the way media is now, and we all. I love my cell phone. Gosh, it's the most amazing instrument that I just can't believe. I should ask Siri that question and let her answer it. I mean, she'd come up with a great answer. Yeah. Anyway, I wish, I would love to see the kids running around the park by themselves, just, playing, just having fun. It's tough, and I don't know the solution. I don't have an answer. I don't have enough wisdom to come up with an answer.
The TV would help a lot of kids.
Yeah.
Well, life really is a journey. I think there's too great a reliance on science and less of a reliance on spirituality, in fact. I think that we're missing out there big time, I think. But again, that's a journey for a lot of people. I kind of look back where I was I wasn't sort of very spiritually aware, even though I got all the ingredients for it, etc. So I think it's a journey as we get on our life's experiences. As Helen was saying, we grow and we become wiser, etc. And I think I'm a different person now, but I do feel that, as Jerry says, the fact that it's difficult for the kids now at the moment with all the inroads. As somebody says, the television has replaced the pulpit, and they're getting these messages from all sorts of, what I would say, people who must be from Mars or some other continent, because I don't relate to a lot of this stuff going on, the confusion. So I think one has got to go back to the basics and get a little bit more spirituality in.
That would be a good thing.
Thank you. We have a question from Johnny. What do you wish your grandchildren or their generation did differently?
Would what?
I'll repeat it. What do you wish your grandchildren or that generation did differently? So is there anything that your grandchildren or younger people do that mystifies you, or you wish that they did it differently than they do?
Well, I think that's possibly every generation has gone through that and kind of said, I wish the kids would, forgetting that they were kids at one time themselves. So I think the challenges are out there, but I have hope. I mean, I still see these kids out there, some wonderful athletes out there at 6 and 5 o'clock in the morning out there. So there's a lot of great kids. And the sky is still up there, as I saw this morning anyway, and the sun came up, and so it's a journey for most people, etc. And I don't think we should feel we know it all. We're lucky that we've come through and we've gained this experience. So I would say, it's a journey, and I have hope.
I have a file on things I wish my grandkids could do, and I talk about that once in a while. And my kids say, "Dad, you've got to have," and Frank kind of said that earlier. You've got to have confidence in us. We are smart. We're going to be able to make the right decisions. And I don't know how many generations of genes have created me, but it's a whole lot. I know. And that's my hope, is that those genes continue downstream, and the kids, and the next generation are going to have answers. They're smart. We're giving them all of our wisdom, all of our experience, which is what wisdom is, I think, life's experiences, and how you react and deal with them. So I have confidence that the younger people will. And they don't need my list of things I wish they could do.
I have eight grandchildren, and I'm really proud of them. I mean,
Sure.
7 of them are either in college or college graduates. Yeah. They're all smarter than me.
I know the genes are still there.
Yeah, well, they had to come from somewhere, didn't they? No, I think that a lot of young people don't have the direction. They don't have the family help that they need. There's so many kids that are running free. And I mean, my kids had to work as they were growing up. I mean, they had to have jobs. It was important that everybody worked and earned and helped out in the family. And I think not enough parents anymore expect enough out of their children. And consequently, I think it's just gone, not everyone, not all people, but so many don't even have a clue what their kids are doing. And I think it's really sad.
Jan, you were going to say
The one thing that I notice with many of the young generation, they don't have that thank you after you do something for them, or you know, it's not opening the car door kind of thing. It's just different things that I just never, I don't hear that. The thank you, please. And I worry about that because that's part of our, part of us.
Culture.
Yeah, and being thankful is one big thing.
Right.
So, and I even feel with my grandchildren, they were taught when they were young. I mean, their parents did say you say thank you kind of thing, but as they're getting older, either they forget or you know or whatever. Anyway, they don't always say thank you, and that's the one thing that I think you just I don't expect it every time, but yet it's kind of nice just to know that they appreciate what you do for them.
I think one of the greatest privileges and honors that I've had was knowing my father until about I was 32 years of age. I think between the years of 16 and maybe 19, the sap or the testosterone was running high, and I figured I knew a lot more than he did at this stage, but I realized as we were going through my journey that he had some smarts after all, and his advice was pretty good, but it took me that length of time. So as I said, it is a journey there.
Wonderful, thank you. We have a question from Catherine. To any of the elders, what would you say to young people who are feeling afraid for their future?
Be not afraid.
Do something about it.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
I think that, well, a lot of it has to do with parenting, I think. You don't get much out of someone or out of kids if you don't expect it. You get what you expect most of the time if you do it right. I think too many kids have sat in front of the TV set for far too many hours. So many don't have chores anymore, don't have obligations. And I really feel that that's I think too many parents are too lenient with discipline, with how to raise their children. I don't know, maybe it's just because I'm getting older, we're getting old, I don't know. But I see that so often that kids are not expected to do a whole lot.
So are you saying, Helen, that by not having something expected from them that they have fear? Is that what you're saying?
That they what?
That they have fear of the future? That
Yeah, they don't even know. They have no, well, I don't really know how to say it. I just feel like so many of them haven't a clue. I think too many parents have let them watch TV instead of spending time teaching them. We didn't grow up with TV, but I'm not saying that we were brilliant either. But we did things. so many kids don't do anything anymore. They don't. But then again, there's always a lot of good kids, a lot of kids. I think sports are a wonderful thing for kids in school. I think it gives them a lot of pride in themselves. But I don't know the answer for it. I think TV should be turned off. I think they're real. Families are not close, or don't seem to be close like they used to, because everybody's watching television.
I think too, as elders, the most important thing for us is to nurture the kids, is to recognize the skills and talents that they have and really encourage them. I think, you know, even if it's a dysfunctional family, if you can help that kid who really maybe wants to sit outside the box, if you can identify them, I think that's a real treasure, because it's important to know what are their fears. Are they fiscal fears? Is it inadequacy? That kind of thing. But I think the important thing is to let them know that you care. And sometimes that's difficult if they're out there in the middle of the thing. But I think this is where the teaching profession is so wonderful, in the sense that these kids are with teachers far more than they are with their families in many ways. And teachers can do a great job, and the school secretary, of identifying these kids. And as you say, encouragement is huge. Lots of these kids, it doesn't matter if a big strapping kid on a football, he may have the greatest inferiority complex, as even an attractive young lady might have the same. But it's important, I think, for us to help these kids.
Frank, I think maybe the parents care too much. So I think maybe the kids are too protected. You know, they're on their cell phones every day with their parents, even the adult, you know. I mean, it was so different. You came to the U.S., you came across country, you got thrown into situations.
In a wagon, Jerry, a Pioneer wagon with 6 mules.
No, but right. You know, I end up in Meadville, Pennsylvania for, you know, and you could only even call on the phone at your birthday or holidays. I mean, it was a 3-cent stamp on a letter. That's right. That's how you communicated. That's right. You were on your own. And I think so many of the kids grow up without that experience of being on their own, making decisions, failing. You know, now everybody's a winner. Everybody gets a medal or a ribbon. You know, we don't want, you know, and I think even worse now, I don't want to get into the equality, equity, all that stuff that's going on now, but
Jerry, you raise great kids, very independent.
But you let them do things. They made mistakes, I can tell you.
Mm-hmm. So did I.
But they also bail me out.
Didn't we all?
You're right. I mean, you ever try and raise a 13-year-old daughter? I mean,
I did. I have been there.
Yes, you've been there.
But I don't know who's raising who now at this
and
point.
You say, God, how did you do this? And God says, look, I gave you a son first. You know, work through him. And my gosh, he becomes the conduit. It's, you know, life is, but you have to live those experiences.
I think too that the kids that are, say, they're athletes in school, and yet there's a lot of kids that aren't athletes. Sure, and so those need encouragement, and the fine arts, that's such a big thing. Precisely. The fine arts, music, and actually some educational areas, I don't want to say any certain school, but they are cutting like art and music out of the curriculum. Yeah. And I just think that's going to hurt those, and singing, you know, choirs. Yeah. I mean, they each have to have skill. Encourage them to each have something special that is important to them. I mean, something that they would enjoy, of course. But just that's where where I feel that people need to help encourage those kids.
Nurture those talents and
Yep,
skills.
yep.
They have to
They have to work.
create an identity. I mean, the one that's wandering needs to say, what do I want to do? What do I want to be? Set a goal and start working toward it, and realize that I can do it. I may have to have some delayed gratification. I may not be able to have an Apple Watch or something right now, or Buds or whatever. I'm going to save my money and go to Wenatchee Valley College. Start an educational career. I think it's hard for people to do that. I guess me especially grew up as a Depression baby, and that was just the way of life. You knew you had to do it. I wouldn't want anybody to go back to that, but I think those are the issues that we need to look at and address and figure out how to deal with them.
Well, how to motivate children.
Yeah.
To motivate them. And like I say, I think a lot of people, both husband and wife, are having to work to make a living. Kids are kind of go watch TV, stay out of mom and dad's way because we're tired. And
Absolutely.
I think there's so much of that that's
Being a
frightening.
single mom has got to be a tough job.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you so much. Clearly, that was a great question. We're going to switch gears a little bit. There's a question for Jan from Pam. Pam says, Jan, my husband died suddenly and unexpectedly 4 months ago. Other than continuing on one day at a time, which I am doing, do you have any other advice or tips for getting through this?
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
Keep busy.
It is when it's so unexpected. I think you have to take some time and just stop and think what is most important to you that you need to have so that you're not always like alone. And I found out that it was getting busy with other things and not just like for myself. It was volunteering, of course, and a lot of times we hear that about, but get involved in something that you like to do so that you don't have time to kind of be alone and feeling that emptiness. And financially, it's a different scene also, at least for me, because of one income that goes off, and you still have the expenses of having a home and that kind of thing. And so you just have to really take time, and it takes time, but just whatever is your interest and things, just to go, do that. Get involved and have a goal, like Jerry said, or just some goal. I'll just say, just goal is the best term. Yeah.
Great. I actually have a personal follow-up question to that is for you, but perhaps anyone. I'm sure in your lives, as you've alluded to, many of you, and talked about, there's been some losses. And today I found out that one of my close friends who's in her 80s has just lost her husband of 6 decades.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if there's been anything that anyone has said to you or done for you that has brought you comfort in the wake of immediate loss.
Mm-hmm. I know communication with somebody is helpful. I mean, it's being by yourself, and
Social.
that is the big thing. And so I listen to music. And I even dance myself. I mean, with dance with the music, just to be doing something.
Well, let's see it. Let's see some of it.
Oh, yeah. No. I got to have the rhythm there, the music. But it really, it's difficult, though. I mean, you do have to kind of find your interest and pursue something that would, but communicating with people, I mean, that is the big thing. Support. And also, I mean, I turned to God a lot more, too. I've talked to him, and I talk to my husband, too, sure. when I need, somebody to it just feels better to have somebody to talk to. And so if you have a person that's right there, great, and if not, spiritually or that kind of thing, yeah.
There's something, Jan, that a counselor suggested to you that I'd love for you to share about what would you have said to your husband?
Yeah, if I had one more day, what would I say? Wow. That took me to the counselor, because I thought, gosh, what, because I really felt there were regrets, things that you wish you would have said. And it really, anyway, she said, when I went to the counselor, she said, what I would do is write down on a piece of paper of what you would say to him. And you can, just say whatever is on your mind, and either burn it or bury it or put it in a safe place and go back 10 years from now or whenever and read it. But, that was just to get that out of your system and that might be the one help that your friend would have that just lost her husband. That it's just writing all these things that we wish we could have said. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have anything to add to that?
Francis, do you want to talk about Gabby's 5 statements?
Oh, Gabby, yeah, bless her heart. Oh, yeah, the 5 statements that she had. Yeah, she had, anybody kind of who knew us, it was not a Darby and Joan relationship or Romeo and Juliet. Possibly Napoleon and Josephine might have been considered, except she was the Napoleon and I was the Josie. But she had some great sayings, though. She was a tremendous mentor in that respect. Number 1, always do things for the right reason. Number 2, never let the sun set in an argument. 3, if you do something nice for somebody, don't expect something back. And then the business side of her came out. If you're offered money, take it. And what's this? And the other, which is an Irish one, basically, how much will you pay me to take this off your hands? There was always that bit of humor, but that was her bit. But yeah, she was my best friend. And when we talk about losing him, obviously my age, I sort of considered when we lost her. She was about 60 when she died, basically, and we're 2 years difference. So physically, I was in a much better position to look after her, physically and fiscally. And I had my job, which really did give me kind of relief. I wasn't there 24/7, 365. So that was tremendously therapeutic from my perspective. And really, when it got to the stage that her body had deteriorated so much, it was almost kind of, not that I wanted for selfish reasons, but I sort of figured the good Lord must, take her. It's the kindest thing. But she survived for almost 12 years. So, but therapeutically, from my perspective, and I was a much younger person than your friend, etc., and physically more active, because I see in my practice, as Jerry I'm sure has seen, you see these older coming in who are Darby and Joan, you know, older, and you look at physically how each of them is difficult. If somebody has a fall in the house, how do they get that out, etc. So I can relate to your story, and you know, being a lot older and maybe physically more feeble, etc. And one of the toughest scenes I had when I was doing a surgical case, and I was at a meeting in Chicago. My wife fell and fractured her hip, and we had to put her into one of the nursing homes for about a week while I was away, because the caregivers were, all of a sudden, she needed 2 or 3 people. And I saw, it was around the Christmas time, and I never forget the loneliness of a lot of people sitting at their windows, looking out at Christmas time, no visitors, etc. And that really left a lasting impression for me. And I was very determined that she was going to stay home because of that. So there's a difference, I think, you know, in relationship. The very good question you asked about that 80-year-old, the physical abilities of those people to handle the situation. I feel very lucky and have great gratitude because I was able to do that. But I see the difficulties for so many other people.
That's beautiful. Thank you. We have another question. You all have contributed so much in your lives. How do you see this continuing in your future?
I don't plan on making any big changes.
You are contributing.
Yeah,
I saw you at your wedding
How are
recently.
we going to contribute in the future?
Well,
Continue.
you know,
Or
one
do
has
we
got to be
want to?
very,
you
what
know?
do I
Or
have
do
to?
we want to?
Oh,
Yeah,
do we
yeah,
want
yeah.
to?
Well, I try to still volunteer a bit. The COVID has put a bit of a damper on that, but I try to get out there. But I think, you know, Jerry and I would probably agree there are certain physical deteriorations like eyesight and all that kind of stuff. That, but nonetheless, I think, you know, we can mentor. And I think, as Jerry says, you know, we have to grow in different areas. But I think it's terribly important to grow somewhere or another, because otherwise you die in the vine. And whether that's a sport, an occupation, or whatnot, yeah. But I think I've put my best years into the profession. I think probably people are very happy that I have at this stage.
Well, I think in some ways, you know, we're talking about wisdom, life's experiences, and what's valuable for us to pass on. But I think when we're dealing with the current world's problems, I don't think people want to hear from us old people. And it's difficult. I mean, we have our opinions. It's very difficult to, I mean, I know what I would do to solve some of these problems, but they don't want to hear it, you know, because it's often getting back, you know, to families or whatever it is, you know, marriage and all that stuff that's not as important now. So I keep quiet on the, I do what I can do and maybe influence my little great-grandkids that are coming along. Try and live a life still that can be an example, knowing that, you know, the fact that you're still here, it's luck, and as I said, good genes, I think, that I've inherited in a lifestyle that I think has helped prolong it, and so just try and be an example for anybody younger than I am.
And you are.
Yeah, and you've always been active your
You
whole
are,
life.
Yeah,
And
but
it's-
and I think that's, as I say, and some people would say you're a mentor. I have people say, you know, I want to be like you when I'm 90 years old, and they're 80, you know, and they, well, I just was
Keep moving.
keep moving, and I had a wonderful experience. I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks ago. Elisa Cusick, you know, is 100.
Oh, yes.
Her goal was to jump out of the airplane, and she wanted me there. And And Lisa and I have been, I had the good fortune of operating on her many, many, many years ago. And she always, and I loved it. At 90, she was out here. We were in the parking lot at the fish hatchery, and she went off with a guy in a hang glider. But this time she wanted to jump out of a plane on her 100th birthday. Will you go with me? Yeah. Or you do it too. No, not go with me, but you do it too. I said, yeah, when I'm 100. I'm not doing it now. So that's the kind of thing. I mean, it's wonderful. And it's attitude. And you have to alter your activities. I can't play racquetball anymore, but I can swim and I can ride a bike. And so you do what you can do. You can't.
A lot of people don't do those things at a tender age, let alone.
Well, they think I'm 70 years old. I'm too old to be doing this.
But it takes time to.
It's a head thing.
I think it takes time, though, to realize, in fact, the impression and examples that you're given by a kid. It's like the teaching profession versus the medical. Doctors and physicians, we get compliments or awards straight away from the patients. Oh, thank you for starting me. Teachers, on the other hand, it might take them 12 or 13 years before that kid who's been disciplined realizes, God, they made such a contribution in my life. Mm-hmm. So they get their strokes much earlier. And I think the same way with the example, your grandchildren, Jerry, will be talking about you and you. Basically, the examples, but just not right now. So I think we may underestimate the effects that you're having on the people.
My daughter's a teacher, and I think that teachers are, a true teacher is very gifted, and my daughter is a very gifted teacher.
It's a very noble profession.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. So we have time for one more question, which is great because it's mine. And it kind of feeds into what Jerry was saying about how no one wants to know what you have to say. I turned 40 on Friday.
Ooh. You're only a child.
Oh, whoa.
Thank you. And I would like to know what wisdom you have for a 40-year-old looking at the rest of her life.
What do you want to do?
Now they say the 40-year-olds is more like 25 or.
I'll take it.
Yeah. Because they'll say 80 is like 60, and I thought, it isn't really. But anyway, yeah, I remember turning 40, and I just thought I was getting so old. And I wouldn't tell people my age. Isn't that awful? And I then turned 50, and I thought, I know, I'm not going to get out of it, I'm going to be there whether I like it or not. And so I started telling my age. But anyway, 40, it's a different time in your life. And so just keep going like you've been, and you'll stay more younger, like, instead of trying to think that, well, I'm 40, I can't do that. No, don't do that.
Can I ask you a question? Do you think you're becoming more ambitious career-wise at this stage? Because lots of people would say that women, when they, the childbearing ages, they come through, they're preoccupied with that. But then there comes a certain stage where, in fact, they want to grow in a different direction.
They want their time.
Precisely.
It's my time.
Yeah.
Well, as a matter of fact, I just finished a book I'd been working on for many years. And
wow.
I wanted to make sure to be done before my 40th birthday.
Well, good.
So yes.
Good on you.
You had a
Thank
goal.
You had a goal.
Very good.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
And when's your next book coming out?
I'm not sure yet. I have a goal to finish writing it.
Well, I heard somebody recently just saying how busy, in fact, it was Bishop Barron, saying how during the COVID situation, all his meetings were cancelled. But the positive side, now he had time to write the book that he'd meant to write for 10 years, etc. So there's always a positive side to the negative. Yeah.
It's all in how you look at life.
That's right. Yeah.
Took advantage of the
Yeah,
time.
precisely.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So Steve is going to finish up the program for us, but thank you so much.
Well, it's been an honor and a pleasure to be in your company. I am thrilled, and it's been phenomenal. The Ripple Foundation is a nonprofit, so we do accept donations and would appreciate any kind and generous donations to help support programs such as we've seen tonight. The motto or the tagline of the Ripple Foundation is creating opportunities to transform ourselves, our relationships, our community, and the world. And ElderSpeak is a perfect example of that dynamic, of taking the depth of what we can be within ourselves and sharing that with the world and transforming the world in that way. Each generation is, in a sense, tasked with a challenge. Currently, we're tasked with the pandemic, but earlier generations have been tasked with the Great Depression or a world war or the continued struggle for social justice. And how does that happen? How do we meet those challenges? And ElderSpeak is an example of how one generation can support another generation. Because we can see how these challenges are met with resilience, with humor, with respect and kindness. This is what we've seen today with ElderSpeak. And each generation can rise to the occasion to whatever challenge is set before them. It says, we like to say that wisdom is the thoughtful integration of life's experience. And that's what we've seen tonight, this afternoon with these fine elders. Wisdom matters. Thoughtfulness matters. Experience matters. As does resilience, humor, kindness, and respect. Those matter. These are tough times we're in, but those that have come before us have also gone through tough times. And these elders, in their mentorship, in their being, might not tell us exactly what to do, but they sure can show us how to do it. They can show us how they've lived their life with resilience, humor, respect, and kindness. Each one of us has these higher attributes, these higher qualities of what it is to be human. It's just that these elders, they have it in spades. They got it down. So what we can do is that we can take the experience that we've had today and we can pay it forward. Because the world right now is desperate for just a little bit of resilience, a little bit of kindness, a little bit of respect, and a little bit of humor. So thank you for joining us. Please go to theripplefoundation.org and hit that donation button so that these programs that the foundation puts forward, such as ElderSpeak, can continue to thrive and affect and transform our world. So thank you and have a good evening. Is that it? Thanks very much. Thanks.